as we're talking about, Sam Bankman-Fried and political corruption, this is a big story that broke yesterday. Connecticut judge overturns results of mayoral primary just days before election. Why? Because they got evidence on camera of a Democrat ballot stuffing. Wednesday's ruling is the latest twist in an election centering on allegations of absentee ballot abuse. The election captured widespread public attention after a video surfaced online appearing to show a supporter of incumbent Mayor Joe Ganim stuffing stacks of papers into an absentee ballot drop box. I wonder if I think we have the...
there's a video of it.
Yeah, there's a video. Yeah. So this is an image.
These are the people that govern you, by the way.
These news outlets they really do not want to play the video. No. You got to get the video on Twitter. I'll pull it up in a second. But here's what's interesting. They're not stopping the election.
No.
This guy won the primary. They've now overturned the primary. Doesn't matter. He's still on the ballots. The general election is about to happen. It's presumed he's going to win. And they speculate that when he does, this will end any challenge to the primary.
Well, with electioneering like that, how could you lose? It's just crazy.
I suppose the answer is you can't.
Exactly. That's the game, boys. That's what they do. They want. Sorry.
I just think about every time they're like, this doesn't happen. This is something that Republicans made up because they're just crazy. They're sad they lost or whatever else. And then there's this video of this woman doing exactly a thing that people fear and believe happens in their elections.
Well, my favorite narrative is everyone when Joe Biden got elected and everyone's like, oh, it was totally above board. That stuff never happens. And I'm like, you're the same people that were doing this when Trump won, when Bush won. Everyone's talking about the voting machines when Bush won. I mean, you've been doing this for decades. And now all of a sudden they're above board entirely. There's no election interference.
All right, I found the video. It's not even easy to find this video. Here you go. Here's the video that allegedly is of a Democrat ballot stuffing.
Who is she?
We'll pull up the name from the article in a second.
And they have several videos of her doing it.
Yeah,
by the way. It's not one.
Right. This is 1 minute and 53 seconds long.
Yeah.
So let's jump. Oh,
they said that she came back several times.
Yep. Drop number 2.
And how many ballot boxes are they?
Look at this.
Well, how many ballot boxes
what's her
are they
name?
doing
They got her name in here too, I think. Here she goes again. This is Wanda.
That's all we get, I guess.
I think we should say her full name so people know.
So here's the crazy thing. Let me see if it's in this article. Is it? They don't have it. No, they don't have her name in the article. Here's the thing people need to understand. When Donald Trump and his supporters were suing over stories like this, it is a lie that they were all thrown out.
Right.
Of the I think the majority of the cases were thrown out on standing, arguing the individuals who filed the suits did not have they were not affected in this case. Therefore, they had no legal right to sue.
It had nothing to do with the contents of the lawsuit,
which is insane. Yeah. Any voter, any citizen in this country has standing, in my opinion. Of the cases, I think there were 30 that were ruled on the merits. 22 were found to be in favor of Trump. However, because in each of these individual cases, either the number of ballots or some other issues, for instance, one example is the number of ballots did not equal a large enough number to have changed the election, it was ruled moot.
Right.
It doesn't matter if we win for you anyway because you still lost the election.
But it doesn't mean there was no electioneering going on.
There was certainly fraud. Yeah. Bill Barr said there was fraud. The question is, was there enough to overturn the election?
Right.
The courts said, look, yes, you found 300 ballots in fraud, but there's a 7,000 margin here. So what's the point of this? Because these courts do not take action on those, it keeps happening. And then what happens when you get 15 judges in one state and you get 15 instances where it's 100 votes, or I'll say 1,000, and the margin 7,000. And now there's 15,000 fraudulent ballots confirmed by courts. But because each individual judge looks at one small individual case, they dismiss all of them.
Right.
I don't think that is the case for the most part. And when it came to Trump, my point is on a granular level, we can see directly local elections are easily flipped with one person doing something like this.
And this is Democrat v. Democrat. This was a Democratic primary in a blue state, and they are still stuffing boxes.
It's the only reason we're hearing about it.
I know, but that's what's interesting. This is the thing that when it happens, when conservatives or Republicans or third-party candidates say, hey, we were in some ways, there was fraud in our elections, it's typically left-leaning candidates and left-leaning supporters who are like, no, it never happens, but it happens in their own primaries. How can they argue against it?
I promise you it's not the third parties doing it, so... I just want everyone to know.
Everyone knows the Libertarians are the ones secretly rigging the election for Democrats.
We're the ones rigging
for Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely. We're rigging it for the Democrats. Well, and the funny thing is like the Democrats should be just as worried about it, not just because it's happening in their own primary, but because maybe Republicans in small towns are doing it too, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Like everybody should be worried about this. There's no chance that this is a isolated event. We know that. And like everyone should wake up and be worried about these things.
One of my favorite things in elections, every 4 years, you'll get conservatives being like, if these libertarians just voted for the Republican Party, then we would have won. And I'm like, my guy, the libertarians don't like you.
Yeah, we don't like you at all.
Libertarians are like, if Republicans just voted for us, we would just win.
Yeah, if you guys would just stop voting for this like deeply entrenched, corrupt party, that you'd have a better chance of changing the NYPD by yourself than you would of getting like, 700 people together and trying to change the Republican Party at a federal level at least. The Republicans at state and local can do stuff. Like my governor in Iowa's been great on a lot of things, But like this there's a lot of little small like positions that the Libertarians can win and do win. We win 200 election cycle or something like that.
Do you feel like the Libertarian Party focuses not enough on the small? I've heard this argued before that it often is like trying to be at the top of the ticket when really they should focus on capturing key positions in
Our
key
biggest
states.
problem is resources. Mm-hmm. I mean, the national party runs on like $1.7 million a year. Mm-hmm. They can't help a presidential candidate almost at all. Presidential candidates tasked with keeping us ballot access, raising all their own funds, all that stuff. But we do run a lot of down ballot candidates, and I think in 2022 with the Mises Caucus takeover, that became the bigger focus, was the localization, nullification of federal law at the state and local level, and that's the really important thing that any like presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party should be doing this media tour, talking about how, hey, you can take over your local guns, you can take over your school board, all these terrible policies that the schools are doing. You have the opportunity to run. If you got a Tuesday and a Wednesday free every week, you can go run for school board. It's not that hard.
And you should.
And you should, yes.
Even in West Virginia, woke people are masquerading as Trump supporters to get elected.
Of course.
And then introduce weird crackpot adult content to kids.
Yeah, you should be running. Yep. You should be running. If you have 2 weeknights free a month or something, I mean, you could really run for some of these small positions in small towns and change everything.
So where do you see the most libertarian activity in the U.S.? Like, I always think New Hampshire. I've interviewed a couple libertarians from North Carolina in the past.
Well, I can tell you the most registered libertarian voters per capita is Nebraska. But that's because New Hampshire, like when they did the Free State Project, they all registered as Republicans and Democrats to take over those positions as Republicans and Democrats. So that's changing now in New Hampshire. Of course, a lot more people are joining the Libertarian Party there. But,
what happened in Nebraska?
They just have they're a pretty libertarian state. I don't know. We're in Iowa. We're not far behind them in Iowa as well. But Libertarian Party is a national major political party in Iowa because of our gubernatorial candidate who ran in the last election. He got a high enough percentage, we don't have to worry about ballot access or anything like that anymore. But now we need a presidential candidate that can step up and do those things so that we don't have to worry about it anymore.
You need like 5%, right?
There's some speculation it might be a little bit higher, closer to 12%. But every state's different is the thing, right? Like every state has a different threshold. So there's like over half the states, if we were to get 5%, we'd never have to worry about ballot access again, at least not for another 4 years. So it's an important thing. If you're in a swing state and you're not worried about your candidate losing there, throw a vote at us. Let's get 7 to 12%.
You have to register as a libertarian?
In some states all states are different. They all have different election laws. So it just really depends.
Yeah. So what do you expect going into this cycle? I mean, where are you expecting to spend the most time?
It's going to be an interesting cycle with RFK running for sure. But there's a chance, everyone's really worried about RFK, but there's a chance he doesn't get on the ballot, right? He's running independent. It's going to cost him millions and millions and millions of dollars to get on the ballot in all 50 states. He may get on in a few states, but I don't think he's going to be on the ballot in every state. So it's not as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be. But we're focusing on 50 states. I mean, that's the thing. We want as many votes in the popular vote as possible all the way across the country so that we can hit like at least a 5%, or maybe we do well enough in the media and we get that 15% in some of the big polls and we can get on the debate stage, because that's really what we want. If we can look Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the eyes and tell them how bad their policies are hurting the middle class in America, like that's what we want to do, because that's what this is all about. So that's the focus for me, at least my campaign, all 50 states.
No foreign wars?
No foreign wars. Try to dismantle the Federal Reserve as much as possible. Of course, take down as many of these federal agencies as we possibly can. And Vivek is right about this. I mean, we can't, as a president, you don't have the power to go out there and abolish all these federal agencies, but you can lay off 70% of the workforce.
Or just relocate them to Unalaska.
Well, you can get rid of 70% and then take the last 30% and relocate them to maintenance departments and mail rooms at little precincts around the country. And then, maybe we get the FBI small enough to where they stop focusing on trying to infiltrate Catholic groups and go after
Mexican drug cartels,
soccer moms at school board meetings to call them.
I'm telling you, I got a plan to revitalize this country, and it's easy. How many federal employees are there? Do you know?
Oh, a lot. I don't know. It's
one
of the biggest jobs programs in the world.
Oh, yeah. So. Now I got an idea. All right, we'll start with the FBI. How many FBI agents do we got?
I don't know.
I'll look it up too.
Yeah, let's pull those numbers. You got the FBI, ATF. You want to abolish the IRS, right?
Well, I mean, as much as possible.
Right, the first one. No, don't worry. I got a plan. How many do we got, Anna Claire?
I haven't found it yet. I'll tell you in a second.
Enough to infiltrate Catholic groups.
No, well, look.
They're saying they apply 35,000 people, but I feel like it's got to be more than that.
It's got probably more than
Here's
that.
what you do. You don't got to fire them all. You don't got to fire them. What you do is you take 1,000. You get 35 units of 1,000, and you relocate them into rural nowhere places like central Alaska. I'll tell you why. Because then those federal dollars will go towards creating cities where it will require the development of industry.
Right, sure.
You'll create, not only are you going to force people to live in areas, basically colonizing our own country. So, we got a bunch of stuff in Alaska. We should go up there and source our own resources, stop worrying on China.
You've never been to Alaska in the winter, have you?
Well, I don't care. This is great. They can quit if they want.
There's a reason why people don't live there, Tim.
But before you fire them, you say, we're going to give you, 4 more years of employment, but it's going to be in Alaska.
Sure.
Have a nice day. And then when they're there, you're going to have to build housing. You're going to have to build infrastructure. Then what happens is these people, they need to eat, right? So someone's going to open a store. Someone's going to open a restaurant. Then when you have workers there, you have the opportunity to colonize our own country instead of seeing our cities die. How about this? I was looking at this city, Renovo, Pennsylvania. And I was like, this is a really cool town, but it's dying. It was a railway town. And there's like 1,000 people live there. Just send 500 FBI agents. You got to live there now. You're stationed here. And then all of a sudden, you're revitalizing that town and giving these people their jobs back. You see what I'm saying? And then after 4 years, you fire them.
There's
Do we have to give them the full 4 years, Tim? Can we do like maybe
years.
one?
But here's my point. You're basically using them as a means to help middle Americans revitalize their towns and create some kind of revitalization for these areas that need industry. And then you get rid of them.
Yeah, but we're simply not going to have the funding for that. If they put me in office.
2.87 million federal civilian employees in 2022.
Wow. How many?
2.8.
They're like soft gulags.
It's a giant. Well, and you got to add to that. Okay, so that's a huge jobs program, right? Probably one of the biggest jobs programs in the world. But then you got to add to that all the government contracts for people who get government contracts. Mm-hmm. That's the very largest employer in the history of the world, maybe ever, right? So, I mean, it's really wild to think about.
I mean, there is a reason that as the federal government grew, you saw expansion in Maryland and Northern Virginia, right? Because other businesses came there. So to Tim's point, if we were to say, what was it? The Department of the Interior, they moved it to Colorado under Trump, and then under Biden, they were like, no, we're going back to DC. We don't want to be here. But theoretically, if you were to station these federal outposts somewhere else, eventually shut it down or whatever else, you're making these contractors who want these contracts or want anything else go where they are. They're not just centralizing in DC.
It's so crazy to think about these government contracts because, basically, if you're making a lot of money in America right now, it's probably through a government contract. This is the biggest employer in the world, and they put that EO, Joe Biden put the EO back that said that all these government contracts have to have a DEI program. Do you guys know about that?
No.
So if you have a government contract with the federal government, your company has to have a DEI department.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. 100%. Trump had ended the EO and Biden brought it right back.
Yep.
And so when we talk about DEI and ESG and stuff in America right now, that's where it's all stemming from, is from the federal government.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.